heard me say it before, but I'm going to repeat it. American riflemen are the best riflemen in the world because the training they get is the best in the world. You've begun that training with the sighting and aiming exercises, and you're ready now to go on to the next step. Position exercises. There are 4 firing positions: prone, sitting, kneeling, and the standing or offhand position. You know, any old-timer can walk down the firing line and come pretty close to picking out the men who'll do the best shooting. There's nothing mysterious about it. He simply spots the men who've taken the best positions. Good positions mean good scores. Poor positions mean poor scores. It's as easy as that. But here's the thing to remember. We're not teaching you these positions so that you can riddle off a string of bullseyes on the target range. We're teaching you to kill your enemy before he can kill you. If you're going to survive on the battlefield, you've got to be able to shoot fast and straight from any position. You've got to be able to drop into that position instantly, automatically, without thinking about it. And it must be correct the first time. Take a good look at these positions. They look easy. But you're not going to find these positions easy at first because they make you use muscles you never knew you had. But don't worry about that. We'll harden up those muscles. Your work in the position exercises also covers the use of the sling, holding your breath while aiming and aiming. We'll take up the sling first. Anyone here know the reason for the sling on the rifle? Carried with, sir? That's right. Any other reason? Peterson?
Yes, sir. It's a big help in steadying the rifle.
Check. That's the answer. Now let's see how we go about getting the effects of it. There are 2 ways to use the rifle sling. The first, like this, is called the loop sling. The other, called the hasty sling, is rarely used except in the standing position. And we'll show you how to adjust it when we come to that position. The loop sling is used in all other positions. Here's how to adjust it. Place the rifle butt on the right thigh and cradle it in the curve of your right arm so that you've got both hands free to adjust the sling. Unfasten the lower hook and refasten it near the butt swivel. This loosens the lower loop. Unfasten the upper hook and refasten it so that the upper loop hangs down to about the pistol grip. But it may need further adjustment. The correct place for the upper hook depends on the man. You'll get your fit by trying it out. After your instructor is satisfied you have the right pair of holes, mark them so that you'll find them at a glance. Twist the sling 1/2 turn to the left and insert the left hand through the upper loop from right to left. Slide the loop well up your left arm. Leave the loose end free and use both hands to work the upper hook and the first keeper down close against your arm. Then pull down the second keeper against the upper hook. This locks the upper loop in place against your arm and keeps it from slipping. You can't shoot with a loose loop sliding down your arm. Once the loop is correctly adjusted, move your left hand over the top of the sling and place it under the rifle, against the upper sling swivel. The rifle must rest in the V between your thumb and forefinger and on the heel of your hand. Wrist straight, fingers relaxed. The sling must lie smoothly along your hand and wrist. If it doesn't, you've done something wrong. This is the way you hold the rifle. Now let's go over the loop sling adjustment once more. Place the butt on your right thigh, cradle the rifle in your right arm, unfasten the lower hook, refasten it near the butt swivel, twist the sling a half turn to the left, insert your left arm through the upper loop from right to left, pull the loop well up your arm, then work the upper hook and the first keeper down against it, and pull down the second keeper to lock the upper loop. So much for the loop sling. Your instructors will go over this detail with you. Are there any questions? Yes?
Sir, with Japs and Germans shooting at you, like you said, looks like you wouldn't have much chance to get that sling on.
Keep thinking like that, and you'll live to tell your grandchildren about it. You're right, of course. Use the sling whenever you have time to use it, because it gives you greater steadiness. After you've learned sling adjustment, you're ready to start work on positions. Let's take a look at the prone position first. In the prone position, the rifleman lies flat on his belly with his legs stretched out comfortably. His inside ankle bones are on the ground, or as near it as he can get them without strain. His spine is straight. His body makes an angle of 30 degrees or less with the line of aim. The amount of the angle depending on the rifleman's build. When you're trying out these positions, your instructors and coaches will help you to find the angle that suits you best. Thereafter, it's up to you to practice the position until you can drop into it without thinking about it. The sergeant here is well behind his rifle. His weight is relaxed forward against the sling. Thus, his body takes up the recoil, and he is not jolted out of position each time he fires. Look at his left hand and arm. The rifle rests on the heel of the hand in the V between the thumb and the first finger. His left wrist is straight. His fingers are relaxed. His left elbow is under the piece. It's vertical. I can press down hard on this rifle, and it'll give a little, then come right back to its proper position. But when the elbow is not under the piece, the least pressure will make the rifle sag way off to the side, because muscle instead of bone supports it. A muscle gets tired, a bone doesn't. So remember, elbow under the piece. Now look at his right arm and hand. His right elbow is a little forward of his right shoulder. His right upper arm makes an angle of about 45 degrees with the ground. His shoulders are about level. The rifle fits into the hollow of his right shoulder. That's important. Raise your left hand and feel that hollow in your shoulder. Curl your shoulder forward, and the hollow is still more pronounced. Now look at Sergeant Higgins. See how snugly his rifle fits into that hollow? I don't want to see anybody in this company trying to shoot with a rifle on the point of the shoulder here. All that will get you is a sore shoulder. And that means flinching. And flinching means poor shooting. Grasp the small of the rifle stock firmly with your right hand. And get this. Put your thumb across the stock or on top of the stock, never alongside the stock. With your thumb in the right position, you've got a firm purchase for your trigger squeeze and a good support for your cheek. The finger goes inside the trigger guard against the trigger, and the finger is clear of the stock. You can use any part of your finger from the tip to the second joint to squeeze the trigger. What seems natural and comfortable to you will probably give you the steadiest squeeze, and for that reason is the best. Press your cheek firmly against the stock and on your thumb. Let your neck muscles relax and hold your head so that you're looking not out of the corners of your eyes, but straight ahead with your eyes level. That's the correct prone position. It varies a little with each man, depending upon his build, but there isn't much difference. You'll soon discover the exact position that suits you. From there on, it's a matter of practice. You will have targets to aim at in all of your exercises. Every time you get into position, align your sights on a target. A good soldier does this instinctively. He never even thinks about it. Here's something else. When you take any of the correct firing positions, you will find that the rifle aims naturally and without effort at some one point. If this point is not on the center of the target, move your whole body till the line of aim is the natural line. There's a good way to tell if your body is lined up correctly. After you're in position, close your eye and relax. Then when you open it, if you're on the center of the target, you're okay. If not, shift your whole body. If you shift the rifle independently instead of your body, you'll be in a strained, uncomfortable position. And no man can shoot his best when he's fighting his own muscles. These men are demonstrating some of the things not to do, but they are common errors. Let's take a look at this first man. His body is at too great an angle with a line of aim. Now he's behind the rifle, as he's got to be. Look at this man's right elbow. It's too close to his body. He's unsteady. His left hand's too far back. And he's got his thumb alongside the stock. Now he'll assume the correct position. This man's left elbow is not under the piece. They'd have a devil of a time staying on the target. Errors like this stand out plainly. Others are not so easy to pick up. When you're acting as the coach, keep a sharp eye on your pupil. When he's wrong, show him where he's wrong and why. Then make him take the correct position so the point will be burned into his mind. Don't forget, when you take the prone position correctly, the muzzle will automatically drop back on the target after each shot. This saves time. And in battle, a few seconds are enough to settle the argument between you and that guy on the other side. Now, the sandbag rest position is just like the prone position, except that a sandbag is used to support the left forearm, wrist, and hand. The pupil takes the correct prone position and aims at his target. The coach then manipulates the sandbag until it is slightly higher than the back of the pupil's left hand. The coach punches the sandbag with his hand until he gets a perfect fit. This is the coach's job. The pupil can't do it for himself. Next, he faces the pupil, straddles the rifle barrel, and slides the narrow side of the sandbag against the left forearm so that it supports the forearm, the wrist, and the back of the hand. Only the back of the hand rests on the top of the sandbag. It's a common error for beginners to rest the rifle on the sandbag, but it won't work. The sandbag supports the forearm, wrist, and hand. Now Sergeant Higgins is going to show you the sitting position, which is a good one in high grass, brush, or on sloping ground. For the sitting position, you'll usually have to make your sling 2 holes shorter than for the prone position. Your body faces half right from the target. As you sit, spread your feet apart. Farther apart than your knees. And brace your heels firmly. Get your toes down, flat on the ground, if you can get them there, and relax your ankles. Keep your knees straight up, not bow-legged. And keep them fairly low, about 10 inches off the ground. The point is that you've got to get the back of your left upper arm firmly braced 3 or 4 inches down on your left shin. In this way, with your left elbow under the rifle, where it belongs, the weight of the rifle comes straight down on your leg. Hold your right hand and arm as you do in the prone position against your right knee so that your right shin bone forms a block for your upper arm. Lean well forward from your hips, not your waist. Keep your back straight and your weight forward. Don't rest your elbows on your knees. You'll wobble. Your elbows will roll around. No man can shoot in a position like that. Get your arms well down on your legs, several inches. Remember that left elbow. Keep it under the rifle. Now you've got a solid, steady position, and you won't be knocked off balance by the recoil. That's the normal sitting position. It's the best one, and it'll be used in this company. We may have a few men of exceptional build who are not suited to it. Heavy men may have to use the crossed ankle position. And men with exceptionally long legs may have to take the crossed leg position. But your platoon leaders will decide which men, if any, are to use these alternate positions. Now, if there are no questions, we'll go on to the kneeling position. Your sling is usually the same length as for the sitting position. First, the half right face. Then get down on your right knee and sit on your heel, so that your top of your foot is flat on the ground. It takes practice, but you can do it. With your heel inclined toward the target like this, your foot helps to brace you against the gun's recoil. Don't sit on the inside of your foot. Rapid fire'd make you bob around like a cork. Sit firmly on the top of your heel, with your weight well forward. Your left elbow is under the rifle and in front of your kneecap, never on top of your kneecap. The position of your left leg depends on your build. The taller you are, the farther to the front your leg will be. Your instructors will help you find the position that suits you best. But your lower left leg, as seen from the front, must always be vertical. Keep your right elbow comfortably high. This makes a snug seat for the rifle in the hollow of your shoulder. If you drop your arm too far, the hollow disappears and the rifle butt tends to move out to the point of the shoulder. Another thing, the lower right leg forms a right angle with the line of aim. At first you'll find the kneeling position unsteady, but don't worry about it. It will never be as steady as the prone or the sitting position, but practice will strengthen your muscles and increase your steadiness. This brings us to the standing or offhand position and the hasty sling, which is rarely used except in this position. Let's start with the sling. First, loosen the lower loop. Twist the sling a half turn to the left. Hold the rifle with your left hand just back of the upper sling swivel, and your right hand at the small of the stock, with the thumb well over on the left side. Then swing the rifle so that the sling falls high on your upper arm. Let go of the rifle with your left hand, pass it under and over the sling, and re-grasp the rifle near the upper sling swivel. The sling now lies smoothly along the arm and hand. It holds the left upper arm and stretches tightly across the chest. That's where you get support, and you need all you can get in a standing position. Adjust your sling for a tight fit. Your instructors will help you. When you get it right, mark it. All right, Sergeant, let's see that again. Here's how to take the standing position. Face right until you're almost at a right angle to the line of aim. Place your feet about 1.5 feet apart. Keep your body erect and well balanced. As you raise your rifle to firing position, fit the butt into the hollow of your shoulder, but higher than in the other position. High enough so that part of it can be seen above your shoulder from the rear. If the butt is too low, you'll have to strain your neck to get at the sight. If the butt is where it should be, your head and neck will be erect and natural. Keep your right elbow up. The higher, the better. At first, you'll find this unnatural and uncomfortable, but practice will fix that, and it gives you the power of all those arm muscles to take up the weight of the rifle. Here's an exercise that'll loosen up the shoulder joint. When you've done it enough, you'll be able to hold the rifle up with your right hand alone. The main job of the left hand is to steady the rifle, not to support it. Keep your left elbow well under the rifle, and the left hand as far forward as you can get it without strain or discomfort. At best, the standing position is unsteady, but you have to use it on the range, and you have to use it in battle. So it's up to you to make the most of it, and that means plenty of practice. Nearly every recruit gets a brilliant idea of how to overcome this unsteadiness. He pulls his left arm back against his ribs, balances the rifle delicately on his thumb and 2 fingers, and blazes away. But that doesn't work, does it, Sergeant Higgins?
No, sir.
There's only one right way to hold the rifle in the standing position, and the sergeant is showing it to you right now. Thank you, Sergeant Higgins. Now you know the positions. I've given them to you, one after another, to let you compare them. See where they're different and where they're the same. All except the standing position have these points in common. Always hold the rifle at the small of the stock with your right thumb on top of or across the stock, but never along the side. Always keep your left hand against the upper sling swivel, with the rifle in the crotch formed by the thumb and the first finger. Wrists straight, fingers relaxed. Always have your left elbow under your rifle, and always squeeze the trigger with whatever part of your forefinger between the tip and the second joint feels firmest and most comfortable. Always press your cheek firmly against the stock, and hold the butt of the gun in the hollow of the shoulder. In the standing position only, your left hand need not be against the upper sling swivel. Put it as far forward as you can comfortably. And your left elbow doesn't have to be directly under the rifle. Make these habits automatic, and they'll save you time and help you get a well-aimed shot off in a hurry. In these position exercises, of course, you don't squeeze a trigger. That comes later. But as soon as you're in any of the firing positions, you must hold your breath and aim. You do this in dry shooting, and you do it in actual firing. We'll show you the right way to hold your breath and still be comfortable. Take an ordinary breath, then let a little out. Then hold the rest of that breath while you aim and fire. To keep the air in your lungs during aiming, close your throat by swallowing. But don't hold your breath too long. If you do, your muscles will get tense, and your eyes will blur, and you'll get wobbly. When this happens, relax for a moment and start over again. But don't think you can practically hold your breath. You either hold it or you don't. And while you're aiming and squeezing the trigger, you've got to hold your breath. Whenever you practice any of these position exercises, always check your position carefully. Close your eyes and then open them and see if you're on the center of the target. You must always have a target. Then hold your breath and aim. When you're coach, check your pupil carefully for all these points. Helps them. And it helps you, too. You learn from your pupil's mistakes. You know, it's a soldier's skill that brings him through a battle alive. And the degree of skill you attain as a soldier depends entirely on you. You've got to master not just one firing position, but all four. The enemy isn't going to give you a chance to choose the one you like best. You may be standing in a foxhole with your elbows on the parapet, or behind a tree, or a wall, kneeling in a shelter, or heavy undergrowth, sitting in a sniper's post, or in a field, or you may be prone in a ditch, or out in the open. That's why we teach you the four firing positions and drill you in them until they become second nature, to get you ready for the tough spots. There'll be plenty of tough spots. And when you get into one, your whole job will be to get your shots off fast and hit what you're shooting at. So work on the firing positions now while you can. Later on, you'll be mighty glad you did, because you'll get your enemy before he gets you. In our work so far, we've learned what the correct sight picture is and how to get that picture into the sights of the rifle and hold it, whether you're prone, sitting, kneeling, or standing. Today, we take up the most important thing in rifle marksmanship, the trigger squeeze. By that term, trigger squeeze, I mean the process you go through to bring your trigger back and fire your rifle. You know, when I was learning to shoot the rifle, my coach was an old sergeant who had fought in everything from Santiago to the Argonne. When we got to trigger squeeze, he told me something that has stayed with me ever since.
Soldier, the trigger squeeze is the heart and soul, the beginning and the end of all good shooting. With it, you can part the hair of any guy you're after as far as you can see. Without it, you might as well throw away your rifle and start heaving rocks, because you'll do a hell of a lot better.
That old sergeant knew what he was talking about. You can be a ball of fire in your sighting and aiming. You can be red hot in your positions. But if you can't teach that trigger finger to squeeze, 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 well, you better get yourself a supply of rocks, as my old sergeant suggested, because you're going to need them. Now, there's nothing difficult about the trigger squeeze. It's just a question of applying a smooth, increasing pressure to the trigger until the rifle fires. The trick is to apply that pressure so smoothly and so steadily that you can't tell when the rifle is going to fire. If you can't tell when the rifle is going off, you can't jump or jerk, or, as we say in the Army, you can't flinch. Have you ever seen an untrained person fire the rifle? This is what happens. He gets all set, gets into position, draws what he thinks is a fine bead on the target, and then closes both eyes and yanks the trigger. And he wonders why he never hits the target. Remember this. It's instinctive, natural, for every one of us to close both eyes and tighten up when we fire a rifle, if we know when that rifle's going off. But when you do that, you spoil your aim. You not only miss the bullseye, but you may miss the whole target. Now, there's only one way to beat nature on this proposition. And that is to squeeze the trigger so smoothly and to increase the pressure so steadily that you don't know when the rifle's going off. If you don't know the rifle is going off, you can't close your eyes and flinch and spoil your aim before the shot is fired. The worst you can do is bat your eyes after the rifle is fired. And that doesn't hurt anything because the shot is already on its way. Simple, isn't it? Now let's see exactly how you go about learning this trick in your dry shooting. You practice the trigger squeeze in all positions, but you start out in the prone position with a sandbag because that's the steadiest, and it lets you concentrate on the sight picture and squeeze until you get the hang of it. First, you take the prone position and adjust yourself until the rifle points at the target without effort. Then the coach fits the sandbag. The coach takes his position, and the exercise begins. Cock your rifle, hold your breath and aim. When you get the correct sight picture, take up the slack. By trigger slack, we mean the play between the trigger's forward point and the point where you first feel resistance. Take it up decisively. While you're taking up the slack, you're starting your trigger squeeze. It's all one action of your finger, working by itself, independent of the rest of your hand. You press smoothly, straight to the rear, and you increase the pressure steadily from start to finish. Your rifle has a fixed pull, say about 4 pounds. When you take up your slack, you take up part of that pull. Your constantly increasing pressure takes up the rest of it. And then the trigger gives, and the rifle fires. But follow through. Hold your position. Hold your aim, and continue your increasing pressure. I'll tell you more about that later. What I want you to get now is this. If you squeeze the trigger properly, you can't know when the rifle is going to fire, and therefore you won't be able to flinch. You all understand that? There's another mistake all of us make when we first start shooting the rifle. Practically everyone has a violent impulse to yank the trigger the instant the sights come in correct alignment with a target. The beginner is tempted, particularly in the kneeling and standing positions, where the unsteadiness is marked. Your sights move a little, side to side, up and down. Finally, they come to bear exactly on the bull's eye. So, at that instant, you jerk the trigger. And this is what happens. You literally jerk your rifle clear off the target. You may not see it, because both of your eyes will probably be shut tight and your muscles taut and braced for the shock. But whether you see it or not, the result is the same. A wild shot. There's only one way to get hits, and only hits count on a battlefield. And that is to squeeze the trigger. Now, you've seen what happens when you jerk the trigger instead of squeezing it. I'm going to show you why it happens. Let's assume that I'm shooting at a target 500 yards away. I've got my sights lined up on the left edge of the bullseye. Since the range is 500, I would be using a B target with a 20-inch bullseye. If I fired now, I'd hit the left edge of the black. Now I'm going to move the rifle 20 inches to the right. And let's assume that I've moved the butt and the muzzle exactly the same distance. In other words, my line of aim now is exactly parallel to my line of aim before I moved the rifle. If I'd fired then, I would have creased the left edge of the bull. Who can tell me where I'd hit if I fire now? William?
It increased the right edge of the bull, sir.
Right. Do you all understand that? I can move this rifle back and forth 20 inches. And if I fired it anywhere within that space, I'd still get a bullseye as long as I kept my lines of aim parallel. I move the rifle 10 inches to the left again, still keeping my parallel line of aim. If I fired it now, I'd hit the bullseye dead center. But now watch this. I'm going to keep the butt in place and move the muzzle of the rifle just 1 inch. The butt stays the same as it is. I've moved the muzzle only 1 inch. If I fired now, where would it hit? Norton?
It would go off to one side, sir. I don't know just where it would hit.
Neither do I know just where it would hit. But I can tell you this. It would miss the center of the bullseye by about 35 feet. Get that. 35 feet. The point is, when you jerk the trigger, you twist the rifle off the line of aim. When your sights are on the target, you can move your whole rifle from side to side the width of the bullseye and still hit it, if the rifle always stays parallel to the line of aim. But if the butt of the rifle remains stationary and you jerk the muzzle off to one side as much as 1 inch, your bullet will miss the target by about 15 feet at 200 yards, by 21 feet at 300 yards, or by 35 feet at 500 yards. A half-inch movement of the muzzle means a miss by 17 or 18 feet at 500 yards. A quarter-inch movement will cause a miss by 8 or 9 feet. And even a movement as small as a 1/16 of an inch may make you miss the bullseye. That's why it's so important to take the correct position, so that your rifle and your whole body aim directly at the bullseye. Then, when you squeeze the trigger so smoothly that you don't know when the rifle's going off, the strike of your bullets will be changed only by the natural parallel movements of your body, and your shots will be good. The unsteadiness caused by the natural movements of your body does not seriously affect the aim if you squeeze the trigger correctly. Okay, let's see if you got the point so far. What happens if you jerk the trigger? Harris?
It'd throw your rifle muzzle off the target. If you were shooting at a guy, you wouldn't hit him.
Right. Remember it, and you'll get plenty of bullseyes. And guys, too. What should you do? Karinsky?
Sir, you should squeeze the trigger so that you won't know when the rifle will go off.
Good. Tell me when to squeeze it. O'Neill.
You take your position, you hold your breath, you aim, you take up your slack, and then you pull the trigger.
Do you pause after you've taken up your trigger slack before you begin to squeeze it? Austin?
No, sir. Taking up on the slack starts you on the squeeze.
Right. And you go on steadily applying pressure until the hammer falls. Do you flinch and spoil your aim if you squeeze the trigger properly? Marshall?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because you don't know when the rifle's going off.
Check. Here's all there is to it. Every time you squeeze the trigger, be sure to do these things. Apply a steadily increasing pressure and continue smoothly until the rifle is fired. I know this seems easy. It is, but it must be practiced over and over. You must develop the habit of thinking only of the sight picture. You must practice until the trigger finger works independently, as if it had a mind of its own. Are there any questions?
Sir, How much time should you take to squeeze the trigger?
The expert takes about 2 seconds to fire a well-aimed shot. He can do this because he knows his job so well that the whole procedure is almost automatic. Speed comes with practice, and he follows through. Here's what we mean by follow through. After the hammer falls, go right on for an instant doing what you were doing. Hold your breath and aim and apply your steadily increasing pressure on the trigger. This helps overcome the natural tendency to let go, which disturbs the sight alignment. All right. We've shown you how to squeeze the trigger and follow through. And we have a neat little way of checking up on you. With each shot, we have you call out where you think the bullet is going to hit. This is calling the shot. And you do it the instant after the shot is fired. It's a cinch to call your shots if you're squeezing the trigger properly. For then your eye is open, and you can see where your sights are aligned when the rifle fires. Of course, if you jerk the trigger, or close your eyes and flinch, you won't be able to call your shot, because you won't know where your sights are aligned when the rifle went off. The point is that only the man who squeezes the trigger properly can tell where his shot should hit. Here's the system we use to call our shots. Most of you know by now that a hit here is a 5. And in this circle, a 4. And in this one, a 3. Anywhere else on the target is a 2. A miss is a 0. Now, every time you fire a shot, imagine a large vertical clock face on your target with a bullseye in the center. This gives you a simple system of calling your shots. For example, suppose at the instant your rifle goes off, you see your sights aligned so that the bullet will hit here. Then you will call your shot a 4 at 12 o'clock, because it's in the 4 circle and in the direction of 12 o'clock. A hit here would be a 3 at 7 o'clock. Here, a 2 at 2 o'clock. And here, a 4 at 11. And here, a pinwheel 5. On the range, you call your shots at slow fire. You and the coach compare the called shot with the actual shot to see if you know where you are aiming when the piece is fired. In dry shooting, there's no way to check whether or not you call your shots correctly, but it's to your advantage to do so. It helps you to develop the habit of concentrating on the sight picture and forgetting the trigger finger. It helps you to develop the habit to call the shot, as you'll do on the range. Now, in the trigger squeeze exercise, as in all the others, the coach must check every step. He sees that the sights are properly blackened and the sling correctly adjusted. He checks the pupil's position. If it's wrong, he tells him why and corrects it. He keeps an eye on the pupil's back during aiming to make sure he holds his breath properly. He sees the pupil takes up the slack and squeezes the trigger properly. He watches his eye to make sure he does not blink. When the pupil is actually firing the rifle, you can chalk up a flinch for him any time you see his eye close. The flincher closes his eye just before the explosion. Therefore, you can see it. If he doesn't flinch, you won't see his eye close, because your eyes and his will close involuntarily at the sound of the explosion. Are there any questions about anything we've covered today? Okay. You're going to hear these things over and over again from your coaches, your squad leaders, your platoon leaders, and me. You're going to hear them and practice them until they become so much a part of you that you couldn't forget them if you wanted to. If you acquire these correct habits in your preparatory work, you'll find that the actual firing on the range is as simple as shooting fish in the kitchen sink. To be a good shot, you must dry shoot or squeeze off 100 or more shots for every round fired, and with as much care. Remember, skill in squeezing the trigger correctly is the best life insurance you can get. Everything we've been teaching you about the M1 rifle, sighting and aiming, positions, trigger squeeze, the whole course in marksmanship, has been leading straight to the subject we're going to take up right now. Rapid fire exercises. But let me warn you right now about that word rapid. It does not mean taking just any position, or hurrying your aim, or jerking the trigger. It does not mean spraying bullets all over the landscape. Rapid fire means getting off well-aimed shots as fast as you can. It means firing as fast as you can fire accurately, no faster. The measure of your effectiveness in rapid fire is not shots per minute, but hits per minute. Remember that when you're on the range. And remember it when your target is a Jap or a German, who's just as anxious to kill you as you are to kill him. Keep calm and hit what you're shooting at. Suppose you're in a supply detail that runs into an ambush. You've got to drop into position and get your shots off fast. But they won't do you any good unless they're well-aimed shots. Or suppose you're in a defensive position. All of a sudden, your enemy's in close, charging you from all sides. Your first impulse is to start blazing away wildly. You must not. Keep hold of yourself. You've got to shoot fast, but you've got to make every bullet count. Don't lose your head, even though hell's breaking loose all around you. Stay cool and shoot straight, and you'll live to tell your girl about it. Coolness in battle comes from confidence in yourself, and confidence comes only from hours of practice. Slow fire and rapid fire, over and over, with a stopwatch looking over your shoulder. We teach rapid fire in 3 positions. In the prone position, and in the sitting position, which are the best, and the kneeling position. The kneeling position is none too steady, but there are times when it comes in handy, and you'd better be ready for just about anything. We don't teach rapid fire in the standing position, however. It's not worth it. In the standing position, you're not properly balanced for accurate aiming at high speed. The first thing you've got to learn in rapid fire exercises is getting into the right firing position in a hurry. You're allowed to choose the position you're going to take and to mark it. For the prone position, drop to the ground, get set, and line up your sights on the target. Mark the points for your right and left elbows and the butt of the rifle. Then, keeping your feet in place, stand up. Hold the heel of the stock in your right hand. Now you're ready. At first you practice getting into the prone position by the numbers. On the count of 1, bend your knees to the ground and throw your weight back. On 2, place the butt of your rifle on the ground at the spots you marked for it. At 3, place your left elbow on its mark. At 4, take the butt of the rifle off the ground and fit it into the hollow of your shoulder.
At 5, return your right hand to the small of the stock and drop your right elbow to the ground on the spot marked for it. Now immediately line up your sights on the target. Hold your breath, aim, take up the trigger slack and squeeze off the shot. Now if your position is right, your rifle will naturally fall back on the target after each shot, and you can fire a whole clip with only slight pauses between to get your sights in perfect alignment. At first, you'll practice by the numbers, so that your coach and instructors can check the accuracy of each position and movement. Take it by the numbers once more, Sergeant.
Yes, sir. Ready position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Once you've learned it by the numbers, you'll practice against time, so that you can check your progress, see how you're going. We start you slowly and speed you up gradually until you can take your position, aim, and get off your first shot in 9 seconds. Here's how it goes in dry shooting. Watch how smoothly the 5 steps flow together into one continuous motion. Go ahead, Sergeant.
Lock. Assemblage, load. Ready on the right. Ready on the left. Ready on the firing line. Target. Up. Time.
9 seconds doesn't sound like much time, but you've just seen that it's plenty for an experienced man. It won't be long before you'll melt smoothly into your prone position with seconds to spare to squeeze off your first shot. Naturally, the faster you get into a good position, the more time you've got to aim and fire. So, slip into position, and then take your time to get an accurate aim and a careful squeeze on that trigger. A near miss in 7 or 8 seconds is no good. What you want is a bullseye in 9 seconds. Try to get a smooth flow in every movement as you drop to the ground. Think of how it would look if every move were made very slowly. Targets. Up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold your breath and take a careful aim. 6, 7. Squeeze slowly and steadily on that trigger. 8. Time. Every one of you can do it as easily as that, if you remember this one point. Do it as fast as you can do it right. Never hurry your aim or your trigger squeeze. Now for the sitting position. First, take the correct position and try it out to be sure the rifle points naturally at the target. Then mark the places for your heels and your seat. Stand up in the marks for your heels. At the command, targets up, drop quickly on the spot marked for your seat, breaking the fall with your right hand. There's another way of getting into the sitting position that you may find easier. After you've marked the places for your feet, cross your legs and rise. Stand with your legs crossed until the command targets up. Then bend your knees and sink to the ground. This is quicker than the other method, but it forces you to take your eyes off the target while you set your feet in the places marked for them. Otherwise, the action is the same. Place your left elbow. Fit the rifle butt into the hollow of your shoulder and complete your firing position. Hold your breath, aim, and squeeze off the shot. With practice, you'll be able to go from the ready to the sitting position and get off your first aim shot in 7 seconds. Sergeant, let's see that against time.
Lock. Assemblage, load. Ready on the right. Ready on the left. Ready on the firing line. Target. Up.
Time. Here, too, of course, the quicker you take the correct position, the more time you've got to squeeze off your shot. The exercise in the kneeling position is like the other two. You mark the places for your feet and your right knee and get up. On command, you lock, load, and stand ready. When you hear targets up, take the kneeling position you've marked, hold your breath, aim, and squeeze the trigger. With practice, you'll be able to go from the ready position to the kneeling position and get off your first shot in 7 seconds.
Target. Up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Time.
I've said the place to save time in all three of these exercises is in taking your positions. But don't misunderstand me. That does not mean scrambling into the wrong position in a hurry. In rapid fire, just as in any other phase of rifle work, you've got to be in the correct position before you start to aim. After you've learned to take the 3 firing positions and squeeze off your first shot at the required speed, you're ready for the cadence exercise, the purpose of which is to develop a rhythm, a regular beat, at about 3-second intervals. For one thing, it's easier to work smoothly in a regular cadence. For another, on the range, you're allowed a limited time to take your position, fire your first clip, reload, and get off your second clip. And a 3-second interval will bring you out comfortably within the time allotted. We don't expect you to be able to do it all at once. We'll start you dry shooting at the rate of an aimed shot every 5 seconds. Then every 4.5. Then every 4. Which in dry shooting corresponds to 3 seconds on the range, because the hand operation of the piece is slower than its actual operation in firing. Here again, the coach and pupil method is the best. The pupil simulates firing while the coach works the operating rod handle. To keep the bolt from being held in the open position when it is thrown back, the coach puts a small block of wood in the clip. There are several other ways to get the same result. But in this company, we find this method the easiest and the best. Your squad leaders will have a supply of these blocks and will issue them when they are needed. Let's take the exercise at 5-second intervals.
Hammers down. Coach is ready. Bolt. 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 Bolt.
As I said before, in these exercises, the coach is just about as important as the rifle. In the cadence exercises, when he forces back the operating rod handle, he acts as part of the rifle. In doing this, he must not lean against the handle. He strikes the handle sharply and immediately removes his hand so that the bolt can snap back into position. It's a good idea for the coach to wear a glove or wrap a handkerchief around his hand. Strike that operating rod handle a couple of 100 times if you want to know why. Notice that the coach strikes the handle only when the command bolt is given by the instructor. But notice, too, that the command is given whether or not the rifleman has squeezed off his shot. If the pupil is late, the coach does not operate the bolt, but waits for the next command after the pupil is fired. You'll do this exercise a minute at a time, in the prone, then in the sitting, then in the kneeling position, gradually speeding up the cadence until you're proficient. In cadence exercises, be sure to take the correct position so that your sights return automatically to the aiming point after each shot. Keep your eye constantly on the sight picture and squeeze that trigger with a steadily increasing pressure until the hammer falls. Then keep your finger on the trigger for the next shot. Yes, I'll say it again. It's constant drill in speed and accuracy that makes the expert rifleman. But even constant drill won't do you any good unless you make each movement right every time. After you've learned to fire in cadence, you'll move on to 2 exercises in simulated rapid fire. For the first of these, you'll use the clip with the wooden block. On the command targets up, you'll go from standing to the prone position and squeeze off your first shot in 9 seconds. Then, you'll get off each of the next 7 rounds of your first clip at 4-second intervals. But there won't be anybody to call off these intervals for you. Your cadence exercise will have taught you the rhythm. When you hear 8th round, reload, you'll simulate reloading. And you'll have 9 seconds to do it and squeeze off your 9th shot. Once again, 4 seconds each for the next 7 rounds. When you hear last round, you'll still have 5 seconds extra before the command cease firing. This exercise is done in a total of 79 seconds. All right, let's see how it goes.
Lock. Simulate load. Ready on the right. Ready on the left. Ready on the fire line. Targets. Hup.
Good.
First round.
The first shot should be fired in the first 9 seconds. You've got 4 seconds for each of the next 7 shots.
4.
Ha!
6.
7. Your 8th shot should be off by the time you hear this.
8th round.
But
Reload.
remember, you count your own shots. If you fired the 8th round before you hear reload, you don't have to wait. Reload immediately.
10. 7. 12. 13.
If you keep your fire rhythmical and steady, you'll get off your last shot just as it's called.
15. 16. Last round.
If you don't, you still have 5 more seconds to finish up without hurrying.
Firing.
That's your first exercise in simulated rapid fire. But before we go on, there are several things I want to point out. In all of your rapid fire exercises, be sure to count your shots aloud, as you heard Private Oss do just now. By counting the shots, you know exactly what's left in your clip, and you're ready to reload when you should, which saves time. But there's another reason. You've got to use the air in your lungs to call the number, and that forces you to breathe at just the right time. But don't get the idea that counting aloud is just a training exercise. You'll call the numbers out in battle, too, and your reasons for doing it will be the same, but a whole lot stronger. In combat, knowing when to reload will save more than time. Getting caught with 1 round in your rifle when the enemy is coming at you is as good a way as any to put an end to your career. When you're firing, keep your eye on the target all the time. Don't look away. If you squeeze your trigger properly,
the recoil will jerk your head up a little, but it'll fall back with the rifle. And when you have to look away to reload, be sure you get back on the right target. On the range, the prettiest dead center 5 on the wrong target goes down on your score as a 0. And remember, the habits you're forming now are the ones you'll take with you into battle, where your target is hard to see and is easily lost. In dry runs, the command bolt is not given. The coach listens for the click of the hammer and strikes the operating rod handle back the second he hears it. When you simulate, or pretend, to load that second clip, don't hurry it. If you do, you'll only cheat yourself out of some valuable training. Don't do it as Private Auster's doing it now. That kind of exercise is worse than none because it creates bad habits. Go through your simulated reloading exactly as if you were handling a clip. A fumble in reloading, when you're firing for record, would knock your score into a cocked hat. That's your first exercise in simulated fire, and you'll practice it in the prone, sitting, and the kneeling positions. You're allowed a total of 79 seconds for the prone exercise, but only 74 seconds for the sitting and kneeling. 7 seconds instead of 9 to take the position and fire the first round. 8 seconds instead of 9 to reload. And 3 seconds extra instead of 5 at the end. Except for the positions and time, the sitting and kneeling exercises are exactly like the prone. The purpose is to teach you to keep the proper cadence, even though no one is calling bolt. Once you've learned this, you'll repeat the series using dummy rounds and no wooden block. The timing is the same, and the performance is the same. But with dummy rounds, you must learn to load a fresh clip quickly, and that's a trick in itself. As you take the clip from your belt, grasp it at the base and near one edge between your thumb and forefinger. Then carry it forward, swinging it up until the bullets point forward. Place the clip in the receiver and slide your thumb forward along the top of it to the center of the cartridge. Double your fingers up, out of the way. Raise your arm and press the clip down into the receiver until the clip latch engages. As you raise your thumb, the operating rod handle should snap forward. If it doesn't, strike it with the heel of your hand, and your rifle is ready to be fired again. Here's how a trained rifleman reloads in the prone position. In the sitting position, and in the kneeling position. When you first do these exercises, you'll feel that 79 and 74 seconds are going to rush you. But there's plenty of time to get off those 16 shots. So don't try to beat the clock. That won't help your score. When you get on the range, you're scored on your hits. Don't get buck fever. The stopwatch is important, but don't let it push you around. Don't be in such a rush that you spray bullets all over the target. If you're going to shoot wild, you can get all your shots off in 30 seconds. But don't do it. When a recruit does, and then turns and finds an old-timer beside him, just loading his second clip, well, he feels like a fool. Take it easy. There's no time to pick daisies, but there's plenty of time to fire 16 shots and get 16 bullseyes. And remember, even 12 bulls are better than 16 threes. So don't get excited. Slow and careful. That's the rule that brings in the high scores on the range. And it's the rule that mows them down in battle. Up to now, we've been discussing the pupil and what he does. Now let's look at the coach. In rapid-fire exercises, he's got plenty to do, and not much time to do it in. In addition to his other duties you already know about, he makes sure the pupil takes his position quickly and without waste movement. That he takes up the trigger slack with one decisive action and squeezes the trigger correctly.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That he breathes after each shot.
5, 6,
That he keeps his finger on the trigger.
7, 8.
And that when he reloads from the belt, he doesn't fumble. The moment the hammer falls, the coach throws the operating rod handle back sharply and gets his hand out of the way.
10,
In rapid fire, the coach is the key man. He's got to know his stuff
12,
and keep his eyes open. If he's on the job, he can help his pupil a lot,
14,
and himself even more.
15, 16.
Any questions on rapid fire? All right, let's sum up. Rapid fire is slow fire speeded up a little. In rapid fire, just as in slow fire, you take the right position, hold your breath, and aim properly, and squeeze your trigger smoothly, even if you take a little longer than you should. Speed? Yes. We count the seconds you take, and we work you against the stopwatch. But speed is worse than useless unless you do everything right every time you do it. Take it slowly at first, and make every movement exactly as you should. Speed will come of itself. And it won't be long before the right way is the natural way for you. The only way. Then, when you find yourself in a tight spot in battle, you won't lose your head and blaze away wild. That's the quick way to the cemetery. And for my money, a good soldier is a live soldier. Dependable habits will make you calm and cool and confident, and you'll hit what you're shooting at. That's pretty important, when what you're shooting at is shooting at you. Okay, so they give you the best rifle in the world. So what? Me? I'm sick of monkeying around. What I want to know is, when do we get to shoot this M1? I heard a man in this company say that yesterday, and I've got a hunch a lot of you feel the same way. So, I want to answer the question now. You'll start shooting the M1 when you're ready. And that means when you've mastered the groundwork we're teaching you in this course. You've had sighting and aiming, firing positions, trigger squeeze, and the principles of rapid fire. We've been training your eyes and your muscles for the job of shooting. And now your brains are going to get a workout. So this is a skull practice session. We'll take elevation and windage. I'm going to show you how to raise or lower your sights to take care of the natural drop of your bullet, and how to move your sights right or left to allow for the effect of the wind on your bullet's path to the target. Look at the sights on your rifles. Your front sight is fixed, and your rear sight is movable. It has two knobs, the windage knob to move it from side to side,
and the elevating knob to move it up and down. Turn these knobs. You notice that they don't rotate freely. They click as you twist them, and those clicks are important. For each click, your sight moves an exact distance, and that's the way you keep track of the adjustments you make. All right, let's talk about elevation first. If you've ever thrown or hit or caught a baseball, you know the principle of elevation. You know that no matter how fast it's traveling, a baseball keeps falling all the time it's in the air. The farther it goes, the farther and faster it falls. Exactly the same thing is true of a bullet. Well then, suppose you're firing at a target 300 yards away, and you make no allowance for the fall of the bullet. Suppose that when it leaves the muzzle of your rifle, the bullet's heading straight for the center of the bullseye. But it drops. It starts to fall as soon as it leaves your rifle, and it keeps on falling. The distance it falls in the first few yards isn't worth worrying about. But at 300 yards, your bullet will drop 20 inches or more. It'll drop right off the bullseye. You've got to tilt your rifle up a little to allow for that drop. Suppose you raise your rear sight. But you keep our old friend the correct sight picture. The line of aim must always be the same. So, setting your rear sight higher makes you tilt your rifle up. The higher your rear sight, the higher the tilt of your rifle. Do you get that? When you adjust your rear sight for elevation, you simply fix the exact amount you're going to tilt your rifle. That means how much you're going to raise or lower the hit of your bullet on the target. And since your front sight is fixed and your rear sight stays where you set it, you make precisely the same allowance for every shot you fire. And that's where the elevating knob clicks come in. As I told you, each click moves your rear sight up or down an exact distance. When you change your rear sight, then, you tilt your rifle a corresponding amount. And this moves the hit of your bullet on the target a distance in exact proportion to the movement of your rear sight. At 100 yards, one click of elevation moves the hit of your bullet on the target up or down 1 inch. At 200 yards, one click moves it 2 inches. At 300 yards, 3 inches. And so on. That's what the book means when it says, one click of the elevating knob moves the strike of the bullet 1 inch on the target for each 100 yards of range. To move the hit of the bullet up, raise the rear sight. To move it down, lower the rear sight. And that's all there is to it. Now let's see if you've got that. You're firing at this target at 200 yards. Your first shot hits 10 inches low. What are you going to do about it? Thompson?
Sir, at 200 yards, each click raises the bullet 2 inches. So you take 5 clicks to raise it 10 inches.
Right. One more. Your range is 500. You've made too big an allowance, and your first shot strikes 5 inches too high. What do you do about it? Hopper.
Sir, 5 inches at 500. You'd have to bring the rear sight down. Why, just one click.
Right again. Each click moves the strike of the bullet 1 inch for each 100 yards. You all see that? All right. Let's move on to windage. You may have heard that windage is tough, but don't let it throw you. It's no more mysterious than elevation. There may be a few more things to keep in your head, but take it easy, and you won't have any trouble with it. Now, you might find it hard to believe that the wind can have much effect on anything as small and fast-moving as a bullet. But you can take my word for it. Any wind, unless it's coming from straight behind you or straight in front of you, is going to blow your bullet off its course. Take it as we did elevation. Suppose you're firing at 300 yards and you make no allowance for the wind. Suppose that when the bullet leaves the muzzle of your rifle, it's heading straight for the center of the bullseye. But there's a wind from your right. That wind keeps pushing your bullet to the left, forcing it off your line of sight and off the target. Once again, you've got to make an allowance. You've got to start your bullet off to the right of your line of aim, so that the force of the wind will push it over into the bullseye. In other words, you've got to point your rifle into the wind. If you were shooting an old-time squirrel rifle with fixed sights, you'd have to guess at windage correction. You'd have to sort of aim into the wind a little.
Fetch a jug of corn. You can't get that dark crow that's won through the hay.
You're on. Right, smart wind blowing. I guess she'd take about 5 inches off toward the right.
That's what we call taking Kentucky windage, aiming each shot into the wind by guesswork. And if you had nothing better than a hillbilly rifle, that's what you'd have to do. But you've got an M1 rifle, and it's a different story. It's true, you have to start with a guess at the effect of the wind. And we'll show you some tricks about making your guess accurate. But with the M1, you've got a movable rear sight. And you take right windage by moving it to the right. Left windage by moving it to the left. Then when you've made your adjustment, you line up your sights on the target, taking the same sight picture you always do. But now, you're not sighting straight down along the rifle barrel. And as a result, you angle your rifle to one side. The farther to the right or left, you move your sight. The farther to the right or left, you point your rifle. Do you see that? Well then, when you adjust your sights for windage, you simply determine how much to the right or left you're going to point your rifle. Once you set your sights, they stay put. So, till the wind changes, and you have to make a different allowance, you can be sure you've got the same angle every time. How about those clicks in the windage knob? Like the clicks of elevation, each click of windage moves your rear sight right or left an exact distance. As a result, you angle your rifle right or left a corresponding amount. And that changes the strike of the bullet on the target a distance in exact proportion to the movement of your rear sight. So it all boils down to this. One click of the windage knob moves the strike of the bullet 1 inch for each 100 yards of range. At 100 yards, one click to the right moves the strike of the bullet 1 inch to the right. At 200 yards, it moves it 2 inches. At 300 yards, 3 inches, and so on. Let's see if you understand that. Your range is 300 yards. You fire a trial shot which strikes the target 9 inches too far to the right. Which way will you move your rear sight? Right or left? Keen?
Sir, you've got to move the bullet to the left. So you move your sight to the left.
Correct. You move your rear sight in the direction you want to move your hit. You take left windage, Now, there's an error of 9 inches at 300 yards. How many clicks of left windage do we need? Find?
At 300 yards, well, 1 click moves at 3 inches, so you take 3 clicks left windage. Don't you, sir?
You do. Any questions? Okay. Suppose your shot hit 6 inches to the left of center. What would be your correction if the range were 200 yards? Paul?
Sir, at 200, 1 click would be 2 inches. So it'd be 3 clicks right windage to move the hit to the right.
Good. 3 clicks right windage to move the hit 6 inches right at 200 yards. Now, your target is at 500 yards. Your hit is 10 inches right of center. What's the correction? Murphy?
2 clicks left windage, sir, because it's 5 inches per click for 500 yards.
Excellent. Now, what about that wind you're going to allow for? How can you guess? How can you be fairly sure in advance what effect the wind is going to have on your shooting? There are some good tricks to it, and they're not hard to learn. To begin with, I don't have to tell you that there are 2 things about any wind that are important. One's its speed, and the other's its direction. In the Army, we always speak about wind directions by the clock system. It's simple and convenient. Imagine yourself in the middle of the face of a big clock. Directly in front of you is 12 o'clock. Then 3 o'clocks to your right, and 9 o'clocks to your left. 6 o'clock straight behind you, and the other hours are in between. We name a wind by the hour it's blowing from. A wind from directly in front is a 12 o'clock wind. From the right, a 3 o'clock wind. From behind, a 6 o'clock wind. And so on, around the clock. 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock wind. The Lord knows that's easy. Just remember, you're always in the middle, facing 12 o'clock, and the rest's a pushover. So we come to the other important factor, the velocity or speed of a wind. We measure the speed in miles per hour, and your common sense is enough to tell you that a 10-mile wind will have twice as much effect on a bullet as a 5-mile wind from the same direction. But how are you going to figure out a wind's speed? Well, the best thing to have is plenty of experience. An old-timer can just look at a wind and feel it on his face and give you a close estimate of its speed. But not many of you have the experience it takes. So, you'll just have to figure it out. You can get some help by using your eyes. Watch what the wind does to grass or trees or dust or smoke or anything else it's blowing. At first, that won't tell you much about the wind speed in miles per hour. But you'll be surprised how soon you'll get the feel of it. In the meantime, there are a couple of simple rules that you can use. Here's one. Take something light, like dust or a blade of grass. Toss it into the air and watch where it falls. Point with your whole arm from the shoulder at that spot. Then estimate the angle between your arm and your body. Most of you know that a right angle is 90 degrees. When you hold your arm out straight, then, the angle between your arm and your body is 90 degrees. All right. I'm pointing at the spot where the grass fell. My arm is a little less than halfway up, so I'll say the angle under it is 40 degrees. Got that? If this is a 90-degree angle, this is a 40. Now then, the rule is that you divide the angle under your arm by 4 to get the speed of the wind in miles per hour. Don't ask me why. Somebody made it up before my time and didn't tell me why. But I know it's near enough right to work. 1/4 of the angle between your arm and your body gives you the speed of the wind. All right. If this is a 40-degree angle, what's the speed of the wind? Lewis?
4 into 40 is 10, sir. 10 miles per hour.
Right. The angle between your arm and your body divided by 4 is the wind velocity in miles per hour. If my blade of grass fell there, what's the wind speed? Carol?
That's a little more than halfway up, sir. About 60 degrees.
Right. 60 degrees. What's the speed of the wind?
4 into 60 is 15 miles an hour.
Okay. Remember that. 1/4 of the angle between the arm and the body. There's another rule of thumb, or really it's the same rule applied in a different way. You take the whole angle between your body and your arm when it's straight out and divide it into 5 equal parts. Then each of these parts represents a wind speed of 5 miles per hour. You see what I mean? You toss your dust or your blade of grass or whatever it is, just as you did before, and point to the spot where it falls. Then you work it out this way. 5 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour. Questions? Of course, you won't always have to work the wind out for yourself. This man's army believes in cooperation. If somebody knows the wind speed already, ask him. On the range, ask the man ahead of you. In battle, ask the next man down the line. And if anybody asks you, tell him. Only don't tell him unless you know what you're talking about. Well, now you know how to designate wind direction and how to figure wind speed. You're able to get the information you need to set your sights for the effect of the wind. How are you going to turn this information into clicks of your windage knob? One way is to refer to windage diagrams in your scorebook. These charts work out the corrections for you and will be explained in detail by your platoon leaders. But you don't take your scorebooks into battle. In a scrap, you estimate your wind, do the figuring in your head, and set your sights, but quick. So learn how to do it now, while you still got time to think about it, and get your questions answered. Ready? Hold on to your hats. Here we go. Here's the one-click windage rule. Range in hundreds of yards times wind velocity in miles per hour divided by 10 equals the number of clicks of wind allowance you've got to take for 3 and 9 o'clock winds. Now, don't let that scare you. It's not as tough as it sounds. For instance, when it says the range in hundreds of yards, all it means is that you throw the 2 zeros away. When your range is 300, you'll call it a 3. 500, a 5. 200, a 2, and so on. The wind in miles per hour is what we've just been talking about. It'll turn out to be some perfectly harmless number like 8, or 12, or 18, or 20. So, relax. That whole business, the range in hundreds of yards, times the velocity of the wind in miles per hour, is going to turn out to be easier than the arithmetic you did in school when you were 10 years old. It'll be about as hard as multiplying 3 times 15. You know your range. Say it's 500 yards. Well, that's 5. Your wind's from 3 o'clock. You estimate its speed. Say 8 miles an hour. So you've got to multiply 5 times 8. It's as tough as that. 5 times 8 is 40. And that's the first half of this problem. Now, we've got to divide by 10. If you've ever been exposed to simple decimals,
You know how hard that is. You point off one place from the right. If the last digit happens to be a 0, just chuck it away. And there's your problem. You multiplied 5 for 500 yards times 8 for 8 miles per hour. And you got 40. Now, we have to divide by 10. In other words, we have to knock off that last 0. And the answer was 4. So 4 is the number of clicks of wind allowance you must take. Now, we've been talking about 3 and 9 o'clock winds. Think of your clock again. 3 and 9 o'clock winds hit the bullet directly from the side. What about 2, 4, 8, and 10 o'clock winds? That is, the winds within 1 hour on each side of 3 and 9 o'clock. These winds are not directly from one side or the other, but they're so close you don't bother about the differences. In other words, the rule holds for all winds that are generally from the side. You make no allowance at all for 6 and 12 o'clock winds, because they do not blow the bullet out of line. So what winds does that leave us? It leaves 1 and 5 and 7 and 11 o'clock winds, which are 2 hours away from 3 and 9 o'clock. They strike the bullet only a glancing blow and affect it only about half as much. So for them, you take half as many clicks of windage. Here it is, all in one rule. Range in hundreds of yards times wind velocity in miles per hour divided by 10 equals the number of clicks of windage correction. Use full correction for 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, and 10 o'clock winds. Use 1/2 of that correction for 1, 5, 7, and 11 o'clock winds. Use no correction for 6 and 12 o'clock winds. And there it is. Now I'll do one more problem for you. Your range is 300 yards. Your wind is coming from 8 o'clock. And you estimate its speed to be 12 miles an hour. That's 3 to begin with. Times 12 equals 36. Divided by 10, 3 and 6/10. Am I in trouble? I can't take 6/10 of a click. What am I going to do? I'm going to take 4 clicks. That's the rule. 1 full click for any fraction you have left over in figuring. If your answer were 2 and 2/10, you take 3 clicks. If it were 5 and 8/10, you take 6. You take 1 full click for any fraction left over. All right. Let's see if you can work it out. Range 200 yards. Your wind's a 9 o'clock wind and an estimated speed of 9 miles per hour. Now, how are you going to work out the number of clicks of windage? I'll write it down. You tell me what to do. Range 200. What shall I put down? Tobin?
2, sir.
Right. Your wind's from 9 o'clock. You estimated speed at 9 miles per hour. What do I put down?
2 times 9, sir. That's 18.
Right. How many clicks do you take?
18 divided by 10, that's 1 and 8/10, sir.
Right. Now, how many clicks?
2 clicks, sir. Left windage.
Good. Two clicks left because the 9 o'clock wind is from the left. Now, suppose the wind has been from 7 o'clock instead of 9. Which windage would you take? Left or right? Macmillan.
Left, sir. 7's on the left.
Correct. Tobin took 2 clicks for a 9 o'clock wind. What would you take for a 7 o'clock wind?
1 click, sir. Because 7's is 2 hours away from 9. So you take only half as much.
Good. Do you all see that? Now, here's another. Your range is 500 yards. Your wind's from 1 o'clock. And your estimated speed is 12 miles an hour. Peters.
5 times 12, sir, 60.
Good. You're way ahead of me. Then what?
Divide 60 by 10, throw away the 0, gives us 6. But a 1 o'clock wind takes only 1/2 the number of clicks. So it's 3 clicks.
Good. Which windage?
Right windage, sir.
That's right. You've got it.
I used to teach mathematics, sir.
Well, it doesn't take a professor to do this simple figuring. Now, you're on a range 300 yards. Your wind's from 4 o'clock. Speed 15. Farinetti.
Sir, that's 3 times 15, that's 45, sir.
Right. Three times 15 is 45. Now what?
Then you divide by 10, sir. That makes 4.5.
Good. How many clicks of windage?
Well, like you said, sir, a guy can't take a half a click, so that'd make 5 clicks, sir.
Good again. Five clicks of which windage?
Right, sir.
Right is right. Now, you men seem to have this pretty straight. How about it? Any questions? Good. Only be sure to remember all this. If any questions bother you, ask them. Now we'll cover all the ground we've gone over so far. We started out with elevation. We saw that when you raise your rear sight, you have to tilt your rifle to line up properly on the target. We saw that 1 click of elevation moves the strike of your bullet on the target 1 inch for each 100 yards of range. Then we went to windage. We saw that when you move your rear sight to one side or the other, you have to angle your rifle off to the side to line up on the target. We saw that 1 click of windage moves the strike of the bullet 1 inch right or left for each 100 yards of range. We went into designating wind directions by the clock. The wind is called by the hour it comes from. I showed you the tricks of estimating your wind speed. Throw some light substance into the air and point your arm at the spot where it falls. Then figure the angle between your arm and your body. And that angle, divided by 4, is your wind speed in miles per hour. Or, divide the angle into 5 equal parts. And say each part, as your arm is raised, represents 5 miles an hour wind speed. And that gave you the information you need to calculate your windage. Then we took the formula here, the one-click windage rule, and saw how it worked. I don't mind telling you that I'm mighty pleased about the way you followed it all. Elevation and windage are very important things for a rifleman to understand. But what's just as important is the fact that you didn't lose your heads. Men who keep their heads are the kind of soldiers who are making Tojo and Hitler sorry they started this fight. I don't know whether you've noticed it, but my talks to you have been one butt after another. Sum up what I've said, and it's something like this. You've got to get the correct sight picture every time you aim at a target. But this correct sight picture is not enough. You've got to take the correct firing position. But the correct sight picture and the correct firing position are no good unless you squeeze your trigger with a steadily increasing pressure. But you've got to master rapid-fire principles, learn to coordinate, so that you take your position, aim, and squeeze your trigger in smooth rhythm at a fixed speed. But even then, you won't necessarily hit what you're shooting at unless you adjust your sights properly for range and wind. Today, you're ready for one more lesson, and one more but. You're not ready to start shooting live ammunition until you know how to zero your rifle. Now, no two men are exactly the same. No two men aim or hold their rifles precisely alike. And when a man shoots, he does it in his own particular way. No two rifles are exactly alike either. You can't see the difference between two rifles of the same make and model. But take my word for it, no two rifles have precisely the same effect on the bullets they fire. That means that every man must adjust his rifle for its little individual peculiarities, as well as for his own. For example, your rifle may shoot a little to the right, or a little low. Now, the error may be with you, or it may be with your rifle. In any event, that error has to be found for each range, and your sight adjusted so that you'll hit exactly where you aim. There's one good thing about it. Once you know your zeros, you know them for keeps. As long as you've got the same rifle, those zeros won't change. So you keep them in your scorebook, and you fix them in your memory. They're your zeros, and you need them in your business. All right? How do you go about zeroing? In this company, you'll zero your rifle first at 200 yards. Well, I don't want you to pay any attention to the range scale on your rifle. It's not set, and it may be off a mile. Do this instead. Run your sight down as far as it'll go. Then, run it back up 10 clicks, because 10 clicks is the average 200-yard setting for all men and all M1 rifles. All right. You've taken 10 clicks elevation for your first shot. What about your windage setting for the first shot? To begin with, whatever the weather's doing, center your wind gauge. Set it so that the long lines of the index come opposite each other. And if there happens to be no wind, leave it centered. Let's see how it would work on a calm day. You've taken 10 clicks elevation for 200 yards, and your wind gauge is centered. You aim. You squeeze off your shot and call a dead center bull. And you score a 4 at 7 o'clock. Here. Now you've got to correct both your elevation and your windage. How much? You can tell from the dimensions of your target. At 200 yards, it'll be an A target. Your bullseye is 10 inches wide.
It's 5 inches from center to the edge of the black. The 4 ring is 8 inches wide, and the 3 ring is 10 inches wide. All right. Your bullet hit here. Take the elevation error first. These lines are here to make it easier for you now, but you can do the measuring in your head. Here's your shot. Here's center. Your shot's this much below center. That's 5 inches on the black, plus, say, not quite half of the 4 ring. Call it 3 inches. 5 inches here, and 3 here. You're 8 inches low. How many clicks of elevation to bring the strike up to dead center? Connie.
At 200 yards, each click will move the strike 2 inches. 4 clicks up to raise it 8 inches, sir.
Right. Now, you've already taken 10 clicks as your first setting. So, when you take 4 more, you'll have a setting of 14 clicks. And if this should be exactly right, to bring your next shots up to center level, that would be your elevation 0 for 200 yards. But remember that this is only an example. I'm showing you zeroing in its simplest terms to begin with, so you'll understand the general principle. Actually, when you go out to zero your own rifle, you'll be allowed several shots to make sure your setting is right. Your first correction may be perfect, or it may not. Your second shot will check it, and you may have to make another change for your third shot. The elevation 0 for 200 yards may be more than your original 10 clicks, or it may be less. That's what you'll have to find out. Now let's go on with the problem. 4 clicks brought this strike up 8 inches. But that would make your next shot hit here. That's 5 inches to the left on the black, plus, call it 1 inch in the 4 ring. 5 plus 1, 6 inches. You've got to move the strike of your bullet 6 inches to the right. How will you do it? Carol.
3 clicks right, sir.
Good. 3 clicks of right windage. We've moved the hit 4 clicks, 8 inches up, 3 clicks, 6 inches to the right. There's no wind blowing, so we started with the wind gauge centered. And now you have the setting that ought to make the bullet hit where it's aimed. Ought to, I said, because this is still an example. And I've simplified it to make the figuring clear. But you've got to check your own corrections by firing several shots before you can be sure of your zeros. Now, let's see how we zero your rifle when there is a wind. You simply adjust your wind gauge to correct for the wind it's blowing. Once you've done that, you go on with your zeroing exactly as if you were on the range in a dead calm. Let's see how it works. Say you're firing at 200 yards again. So, you take 10 clicks of elevation. Now, this time, you have a 15-mile wind from 8 o'clock. You start by making an allowance for the wind. What allowance will you make? Monahan.
The range in hundreds of yards, sir. That's 2 for 200 times the wind velocity, that's 15. 2 times 15 is 30. Divided by 10. Well, 30 divided by 10 is 3. So you take 3 clicks, sir. 3 clicks left windage.
Good. 3 clicks left windage to take care of the wind. As a starter, you've got 10 clicks of elevation for the 200-yard range. And 3 clicks left windage for the 15-mile wind at 8 o'clock. You're ready for your first shot. Correct position, correct sight picture, correct trigger squeeze. To make it simple, let's say you call a center bull again. You've disked a 4 at 4 o'clock. You figure exactly as you did before. Elevation first. What's your elevation error? Field.
I'd say the hit's about 2 inches below the bottom of the black, sir. That'd be 7 inches low.
Right. 7 inches low. So what do you do?
To raise it 7 inches at 200, you'd want 3.5 clicks, sir. You take 4, sir.
Correct. 4 clicks up. But you've already got 10 clicks. What does that give you?
Your original 10 clicks weren't enough for this rifle. You take 4 more, that gives you 14. So your elevation zero at 200 yards is 14 clicks, sir.
Yes and no, Field. It's your elevation zero if your next shots prove that it is. But you've got to check it and check it again. Now for windage. What's your correction? Walters.
Well, sir, the hit's about halfway across the fore-ring. That's 4 inches, sir. The center is about 5 inches in the black. 4 and 5, that's 9, sir.
Good. 9 inches. What are you going to do about it?
I'm going to take left windage, sir.
How much left windage to move the hit over 9 inches to the left?
Well, at 200 yards, takes 1 click to move 2 inches. Divide 9 inches by 2, that's 4.5 clicks. You take 5 clicks left, sir.
Okay. 5 clicks left. Now, what's your windage setting?
You started with 3 clicks left for the wind. Now you're taking 5 clicks more. That's 8 clicks left windage, sir.
Okay. 8 clicks left is your setting. Is that your zero?
No, sir, because 3 of those 8 clicks are for the wind, and that doesn't count in your zero. Your zero is 5 clicks left, sir.
That's exactly it, Walters. You all see that? Now, suppose you know that your zero is 5 clicks left. And the next time you go on the firing line, you have a 15-mile wind blowing from 3 o'clock, so that you have to take 3 clicks of right windage. How will that affect your zero? Jackson.
That doesn't affect your zero at all, sir.
Good. Do you all see that? Your zero windage is one thing, and your windage setting is another. Now, you know your zero is 5 clicks left, so you set your wind gauge at 5 clicks left. But you've got to take 3 clicks right for the wind that's blowing. You start from your zero setting and make your wind adjustment. In other words, you start at 5 clicks left and come back from there 3 clicks right. What's your setting then?
5 left and then 3 right. That's 3 from 5, sir. 2 clicks left.
Fine. You make your wind adjustment from your zero setting. Who doesn't see that? Hartford?
I'm sorry, sir. I don't get it.
All right. Take it this way. Suppose your wind gauge is centered to begin with. First you set your zero 5 clicks left. But you've got a wind from the right, and you take 3 clicks right to allow for it. You come back toward the center line again. What I want you to see is that you set your zero and correct from it. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
The elevation setting's simple. Your original 10 clicks are the average setting for 200 yards. Your first shot shows whether it's too much, too little, or just right for your rifle. You make whatever correction you need to hit exactly where you aim each shot. Check it, and that's your elevation zero. Any other questions? Let's have another problem. Another man, another rifle. We'll stick to the 200-yard range because it's clear and simple. But don't forget, you'll have to zero your rifle for 300 and 500 yards, too. The figures for these other ranges are different, but the principle is exactly the same. All right? Say you have a wind from 5 o'clock, and you estimate its velocity at 10 miles an hour. What wind allowance will you make? Crandon.
10 miles an hour at 5 o'clock, sir?
That would be 2 for 200, times 10 for 10 miles an hour, divided by 10. So the 2 tens cancel, and there's 2 clicks right.
Do you agree with that? Matthews?
No, sir, because the wind is from 5 o'clock and you make only half the allowance. 1 click right, sir.
That's it. Remember that, Crandon. Half the allowance for wind from 1, 5, 7, and 11 o'clock. Okay. The wind gauge is centered to start with. You take 1 click of right windage. How do you set your elevation to start with? Hawkins.
10 clicks up, sir.
10 clicks up from where?
First you run it all the way down, sir, then 10 up.
Fine. Very well. You've taken 1 click of right windage and 10 clicks of elevation for your first shot. Assume your aim and your call are perfect. Say you call a center bull. And your discs are 3 at 11 o'clock. What's your elevation correction, Hawkins?
Looks like it's about 6 inches above the black, sir. So that's 5 inches on the black and 6 above. That's 11 inches.
Okay, go on.
Each click will bring it down 2 inches. So for 11 inches, I take 6 clicks down. That's 6 clicks off the 10 I started with. 6 from 10 is 4. 4 clicks up from the bottom. You check it, and if your next shots hit where you aim them, that's your elevation 0.
Good. Now the 0 windage. You've taken 1 click of right windage to begin with. Here's the strike. Link.
That's about 3 inches out in the fore-ring, sir. 8 inches from the center of the bull. 4 clicks right to move it 8 inches right.
And you've already taken 1 click of right windage? So?
So I just take 4 more clicks right, and that makes 5 clicks right. But that's not the 0 windage, sir, because the 0 is the setting you need if there's no wind. The 0 is 4, sir.
If?
Oh, yes, sir. If your next shot's check it.
That's it? Now, there's a time saver with your elevation 0 for 200 yards. Once you've got it, and you're sure of it, you can make a permanent adjustment of your range scale for 200 yards. But let me warn you, this is a ticklish business. You're not to make this adjustment except with the authority of your platoon leader and under supervision of a non-com. For instance, in the problem we just did, you found the correct elevation for your rifle at 200 yards to be only 4 clicks. But that was with the imaginary rifle we were dealing with, mind you. Now, with your rifle, you may find the 0 to be 7, 12, or 15 clicks. Whatever the number is, be sure that your elevating knob is set that many clicks from the bottom. Then, loosen the screw you see there in the middle of the elevating knob. Move the scale so that it's set for 200. Tighten the screw again and be sure it's tight. If it's not, you'll lose your elevating knob. That's how you set your correct 200-yard elevation for keeps. But remember, that's for 200 yards only. You have to zero separately for 300 and 500 yards. All of your zeros are important. Let me say it again. Write them in your scorebook and learn them by heart. That scorebook can be a lot of help to you if you use it right. Look through it. If you get rusty on the elevation and windage rules, here they are, with tables and examples that show you how they work. Here are the dimensions of A and B and D targets. Here are windage diagrams too. They show the correct allowances to make for winds of various velocities all around the clock for the 2, 3, and 500-yard ranges.
But I don't want you to get the habit of depending on the book for wind allowances. Shooting a target is only your training for the bigger job you'll be doing later. And you don't take a scorebook into combat. First of all, of course, the scorebook is for keeping track of your scores and how you made them. Turn to the rifle recording sheet. Take one that's headed 200 and 300 yards, slow fire recording sheet, and I'll go through it and show you how to use it. All right, place. Give the name of your post, camp, or station, in this case, Fort Benning. Then today's date, the hour, wind velocity, say 10 miles, from 7 o'clock. The light is bright. Weather, warm. Range, 200. And you'll do your first firing from the prone position. You'll fill in all those spaces before you go to the firing line. Okay, let's say you're ready to begin zeroing. For 200 yards, you'll start with 10 clicks of elevation. Turn your elevating knob all the way down. Then up 10 clicks. Now for windage. You've got a 10-mile wind from 7 o'clock. That's 2 for 200 yards, times 10 for the wind velocity, divided by 10, which gives you 2. But you only take half of that for 7 o'clock, which is 1. 1 click left windage because the 7 o'clock wind's from your left. Write these settings down. Position, sight picture, trigger squeeze, all correct. So, you fire your first shot. You call a center 5 and immediately make a dot in the center of the little circle under call in your scorebook. The call is important. Don't forget to put it down. Now, your disc for 3 at 8 o'clock. Enter the actual hit on the M1 target in your scorebook. Number it 1 because it's your first shot and you've got to keep track. Then mark the score in the value column under Val. A 3. Now, adjust your sight. The chances are you won't get a perfect setting the first time, but make your corrections. Use your target dimension. From the center to the edge of the bull is 5 inches. Say this hit is 6 inches low. So you'll want 3 clicks more of elevation. That's your original 10 clicks and 3 clicks more. So 13 clicks is the elevation you'll use for your second shot. Put it down and change your setting. Now, I estimate that this hit is 12 inches to the left of center. At 200 yards, it'll take 6 clicks right. Now, you started with 1 click of left windage, and your corrected setting, when you've turned your wind gauge 6 clicks right from the 1 click left, will be 5 clicks right. Put that down in your scorebook. But you've got to check it before you can be sure. So, you fire your second shot, and again call a center bull. But it's a 4 at 2 o'clock. It's 1 inch above the black and 7 inches to the right of center. So you have to come down 3 clicks of elevation to bring the next hit down 6 inches. That's 3 clicks from 13. And you're back at your original 10 clicks of elevation for 200 yards. Now you've got to bring the hit 7 inches to the left. That'll be 4 clicks left windage. Make that correction. Your setting was 5 clicks right. When you move 4 clicks left, your setting is 1 click right. With this new setting, see what your third shot shows. Say this time, you call a 4 at 2 o'clock. And your disc a 4 at 2 o'clock. Well, that's fine. your shot hit where you called it. You made your correction, and checked, and corrected again, and checked once more to make sure you were right. So now, you can write your zeros in your scorebook. Elevation 0, put down the setting you had when you hit where you aimed. 10 clicks. 0 windage is the setting you need to make your shot hit where you call it if there's no wind blowing. You took 1 click left windage for a 10-mile wind at 7 o'clock. But your final setting, when your shot did hit where you called it, was 1 click right. The correction you had to make then was 2 clicks to the right of your wind setting. The windage you take for the wind that's blowing is not part of your zero. If the wind died down, you'd have to take off those clicks, and you'd have your 0 windage setting, because that's the setting you need for a dead calm. Now, if there'd been no wind, and your wind gauge would have been centered, so your correction would have been 2 clicks to the right of center. And that's your 0 windage, 2 clicks right. Put it down in the space provided for it, under the M1 target, 2 clicks right. And now you're ready to fill out your rifle recording sheet. Put down your rifle number, the ammunition lot number from the base of one of your cartridges you were using, 0 elevation for 200 yards, and 0 windage for 200 yards. One last word on zeroing. Make sure your call is right, and always mark it in the call circle. Call what you see the instant the rifle fires, and you'll be on your way to making a good shot. This is my last talk to you before this company goes out on the range. I've tried to give you everything I know that will help make good riflemen of you, and I hope I've made things clear. This is all stuff you're going to need later on. You're going to need it for your final examination, and you're going to need it when you go out on the range to shoot for scores. Most of all, you'll need it when your training's finished and you're in the big show, where every miss is costly, and every hit means that your country has one less enemy.